Grieving people who are still alive is one of the hardest things you will ever do. Hi, as you may know, if you've been here before, my name is Arthur, and today I wanted to talk about what it's like to grieve your parents when they do not accept you for being queer. And before I say anything else, I just want to let you know that your grief is completely valid. Your pain is completely valid. And I want to remind you that you're beautiful, you're worthy, and there's nothing wrong with you. I'm also so glad that you're here and so glad that you clicked on this video, because I believe that I have a couple of things to tell you that are really going to help you on this journey and that are going to be super valuable as you go through this incredibly difficult and heartbreaking process. I'm going to just start by telling the story of what happened when I first came out to my parents and how I've gotten to the point where I'm at right now. I first told my parents that I was trans in 2019, and one of the first things that my mother said after we had the conversation was that the devil had ruined her child. And it was very predictive for how the rest of the entire journey was going to go. After this, it just became a constant battle of me fighting for their acceptance and wanting them so desperately to change their mind. But honestly, no amount of me crying and begging ever changed their mind. Now, my parents never practically disowned me. They always held on to me and kept telling me that they loved me, but it never really felt real. Their love always felt conditional upon me still being the old version of myself that I could just not be anymore. And that always really hurt and was always a deep source of self-worth issues. It really fed into my depression, and it really made me feel just internally always rejected and never good enough. If you've watched the first video on my channel, you know that I've recently had top surgery, and my parents actually did not show up. Because this has been a journey of like 6 years of me constantly being in pain, it didn't really hit that much. It was just more of a confirmation of something that I already knew. There are two people in this world who put me on this earth, but for the last few years, they have emotionally not been parents for me. A lot of other people in my life have taken up that role. I have done a lot of work in reparenting myself, and that's just what it is now. It took a long time to even get to terms with that idea. I feel like my own grief journey, it has definitely not been linear. Let's just put it that way. I feel like I did little bits of grief in between having new bouts of hope and restarting my relationship with my parents over again. In between those times, there were like smaller periods of grief. It really has spread itself out for me. What I want to make this video for is those of you who may be in a similar situation where it's this kind of weird limbo between you and your family of not quite full unacceptance, but also not quite acceptance of who you truly want to be. Because I feel like I haven't heard a lot of other people who are in this situation, and I want to really give you some good reminders and also some actual practical steps, because it would not be my channel if I didn't, to help you on this journey. So if you are at a point where you are ready to accept that you have to start this process of grieving the parents that you don't have, then please keep on watching, because I am going to basically help you and guide you through it. So to start off, I want to give you a couple of gentle reminders or mindset shifts, if that's what you want to call them. The first one is that grieving doesn't actually mean giving up hope. It just means that you're letting yourself feel the hurt now so that the hope doesn't become something that actually holds you back in life. I personally was really afraid to start actually accepting the situation because I felt like I would be admitting defeat, and I felt like I would definitively be losing my parents forever. And that was a super scary thought for me. But what I realized is that actually the hope that I was holding on to, that they were going to change, was holding me back, because I was waiting for them to accept me. One thing that I still actually have not done is legally change my name, because I was still hoping that they would come around and help me pick a name for myself. And it was really hard for me to let that go, but it's so important to recognize that accepting the grief and accepting the pain doesn't mean that you're truly giving up hope. It just means that you're not letting that hope chain you down anymore. So that leads me into the second reminder, which is that you have to accept that they don't love you. They might say that they love you. They might sometimes act like they love you, but parents are supposed to love you unconditionally. And if your parents cannot accept that you are queer or trans, then their love, I hate to say it to you, is conditional. This does not make you undeserving of love. It actually just means that they have failed as parents. And that immediately leads me to reminder number 3. You didn't cause this. The fact that your parents can't love you is not your fault, and it's not anything that you can fix right now. And you could not have done anything differently in the past to make it so that this didn't happen. I personally blamed myself for a long while for my parents not accepting me, and I would wonder, like, what if I was just normal? But all that really did was kill my self-esteem and kill my self-worth and hinder my self-love, and therefore also my progress in life. Okay, I'm back because my memory card was full. Okay, where was I? I remember that I was talking about the fact that your parents' inability to accept you is not your fault, and it doesn't say anything about your worth or the validity of your identity. All it really says anything about is their limitations, and that they actually cannot fathom what your internal world looks like or what your reality is like. At least in the case of my parents, they could not wrap their heads around the fact that I would be happier having had top surgery, and that I would be happier living my life as a trans person, as a queer person, being my authentic self in a way that did not fit into their worldview and what they believed was right. This is not something that you can fix or that you should feel like you have to fix. The next point is that your grief is valid even if you are the one who left. You might feel like because you are the one who cut off contact that you should just be fine, that because you broke up with your parents that you are not allowed to grieve the relationship that you had, which is so not true, because nobody ever makes this decision because they want to. There's no way for you to be the bad person in this situation because you probably never wanted this. I would have much rather had parents in my life. I would have much rather kept them, and that's why I tried to fight for that for so long. But at the end of the day, I just had to choose what was best for myself and actually start this process and actually start grieving. Your grief is completely valid, even if it feels like you're choosing it. You're just choosing it to protect yourself, and you're choosing it because you need to move on. Grieving people who are still alive is one of the hardest things you will ever do. I found this out when I was going through my first heartbreak from a breakup. It is so fucking hard because there's always this part of you that wants to reach back out, but you just have to have this self-control to not go back because you know that the situation was bad for you. It's incredibly difficult, but it is also incredibly worth it. It's the most loving thing that you can do for yourself in this situation. The next point is that you're not just grieving the current situation, and you're also not just grieving the potential future that you could have had with your family in your life. You're also probably grieving the past. When I first came out to my parents as bisexual, even when I was 13 years old, it completely changed my relationship that I'd had with my parents. That means that throughout this process, I've also had to grieve my childhood in some ways. I didn't want to delve too deeply into this. I didn't want to build up all of this anger and resentment, but there were moments where I definitely felt that way. There were moments where I was so angry that they had essentially only loved a version of me that was was untainted, a version of me that they could still mold, a version of me that they could tell who I needed to be, that is what they loved, and that they didn't actually love who I was going to become. There were moments where I was definitely very angry at that, and those were necessary moments, but I'm glad that I didn't let them make me bitter. So that's just a little piece of advice that I want to give you between these reminders, is that don't let that get you into a place of bitterness, but definitely feel the emotions that come up when you think about this. The next reminder is that healing takes so much time. For me, like I said, this has been a process of 6 years. It started when I first came out, and it's still ongoing in some ways. I feel like right now I've reached a very stable point because my parents' response to my surgery really just defined the situation and allowed me to kind of cut myself off from the hope. But it takes a lot of time, and I am not under the illusion that it is completely over. Just remember that there will be moments where it feels like you're fine, where life is really going, and where you're like, you know what, I don't need them, I'm fine, I'm good, and I'm over this. And then there will be a moment again where you feel horrible and where you feel like you're just back in the pain. But that does not mean that you're back at square one. It never means that you're back at square one. You're only going to make progress. It just takes time, and it has ups and downs. My next point, which is very important if you're going through the process, is that grief comes with a lot of fear, because you're not just losing an important relationship, you're also losing a huge sense of security and a huge foundation that you thought you had. So while you're going through this, it's very normal to experience more anxiety, to maybe experience a bit more self-doubt and a bit more insecurity just within yourself, because your parents are supposed to teach you how to love yourself, and your parents are supposed to be your solid foundation from which you can confidently move out into this world. And when you lose them, it's very normal for you to feel like your foundation has been shaken and like the rug has been pulled out from under you. So during this time, it's really important to be gentle with yourself. Remind yourself that this is what's going on, to stay aware of it, and to just be gentle with yourself. Be really kind to yourself. Okay, let's go back a bit to the part of it where it's actually about you being queer. Rejection does not invalidate or erase your identity. The fact that the people who you probably love most don't accept you for this does not mean that nobody will. It's so easy to feel that way. While I was still heavily in contact with my parents, this influenced me on a subconscious level and sort of bled out into the rest of my life. I had a really hard time correcting people when they misgendered me. I had a really hard time standing confident in my identity because I felt rejected on a day-to-day basis. So on the one hand, that is why it's so important to actually go through this grief and go on this journey of detachment, because by detaching yourself from the source of that rejection, you can actually build your own foundation of confidence, and you can actually heal that pain on a conscious and a subconscious level. Okay, we're almost there. We've got 2 more things to go. And the first of them is that chosen family is real family. And within that your biological family does not need to be the only family that you have. You don't have to feel like you're completely losing the entire concept of family in your life. While I was having this difficult relationship with my parents, I leaned heavily on my queer friends and also my non-queer friends, just the people who felt really important to me, the people who were actually making space for my feelings, the people who were actually loving me without judgment. Those people honestly, genuinely saved my life. I would not be sitting here without them. So lean on them. And something that actually became a source of new hope for me was thinking about the future where I am going to start my own family and where I'm going to have children of my own. You have that ability to create a new family for yourself, whether it be with friends and chosen family or whether it be physically when you have or you adopt kids in the future. And the final point before we move on to the next section is that you are not alone in this journey. I would not be making this video if I hadn't gone through it myself. So if you don't know anybody who has a similar situation to you, then hi. I'm here. I know what it feels like. I know how painful it is. I know how hard it is. I know how scary it is. And I bet you that there are some people in your life who have a similar, either difficult relationship with their family or who have also been rejected. Unfortunately, it's a very common experience amongst us queer people. So I highly recommend to connect with them and to talk to them and to share your grief. One of the worst things that you can do for yourself is isolate yourself, because you're just going to make the feeling of fear and loneliness so much worse. Remember that you are absolutely not alone in this, and I am really here with you. If not physically, then definitely in spirit. Okay, we are going to move on to some actionable advice. These are things that I am also still practicing. I might continue to share more insights that I have also maybe on my other social platforms. I currently only have Instagram, which you can find the link to in the description, but I'll be posting more things about this because it's a really big topic in my life. The first thing is to actually feel the pain. Do not run from it. Let it wash over you. I promise it is temporary, but when it comes up, really feel it, let it move through your body, because if you don't, it is going to bottle up. That is just something bad. That is just something that you don't want to do. I mean, pain is just as important in life as love, and pain can actually be a reminder that love is so real. If we didn't feel pain when we lose love, then maybe it wasn't even that real to begin with. I don't know. That's just something that I heard somewhere and it kind of spoke to me. You are going to feel pain at different moments in your life. So it's best to just kind of get acquainted with it and learn how to get through it. And the only way that you're going to do that is by actually feeling pain and actually crying. Please allow yourself to cry. I personally love crying. I always feel so much better after I've done it. One of my favorite things to do when I am just completely overwhelmed or when the grief just gets to me is to sit down in my shower and actually cry like I'm a sad character in a movie. It helps so much and it's such a good relief. Something else I really recommend is to listen to grief songs. I actually made a Spotify playlist, which I'll put the code to somewhere here and I will also link it down. I really hate those typical sad songs that you get in most playlists. So I made a list of songs that I don't hear a lot, and some of them are specifically about parents. Some of them are also actually love songs that people have written to their parents that really just trigger the pain in me from something that I am lacking. But music has always been a great way for me to process my emotions. It's always been a great way for me to pull them up and to actually let them flow. And when I am crying and listening to music at the same time, I feel less alone because there's another voice with me. That is something that I recommend. And obviously ranting to people. When I am overly emotional or no, I'm not going to say it like that because that is not even a thing. When I'm very emotional, I tend to not want to speak to people. I tend to just want to be alone and isolate myself. I tend to have a harder time starting to cry in front of other people. But I think it's a very important skill to have, to be able to also cry in front of other people, because crying is just a way to communicate to others that you're in pain. It's supposed to elicit a reaction in them that they should comfort you or that you need help. If the people around you are secure people who know how to deal with their own emotions, then they will most likely respond to you in that way. And then you can actually feel held and comforted. Tell people that this is what you're going through. Tell people that you're grieving, and don't keep it to yourself, which leads me to the next step, which is to lean in close to family that you do have and friends that you do have. You honestly might have family that actually supports you. I actually have one cousin who was fine with my decision to have surgery. My other family is also not very accepting of me. But if you have an aunt, if you have an uncle, if you have cousins, or if you have a sibling who supports you, lean in close to them. Let them know that this is something that you're going through and accept their support, accept their help. If you're really in the thick of it, ask people for practical help, ask people to cook for you, go to people's houses for dinner. That's something that I love to do. And it just takes a little bit of the burden off of you. And it's just really nice to be surrounded by people and to feel that you're not completely alone, because you're not. There's so many people in this world who love you, who will celebrate you, and who will just accept you so fully and deeply. Make use of the people that are around you. They're there. They would love to help you. And I know that you're going to feel so much better when you accept their love and support. Okay, the next two things are very practical. The first one is to journal about the things that you are mourning. Make a list of the things that you're grieving. Like, for example, that your father is never going to walk you down the aisle, or that your mother is not going to be there at your graduation. Those kinds of special moments where you might not have your parents. I think it's really important to write those things down and grieve them specifically. I have personally not quite done this. I've more so taken the time to think about these things and accept that it's not going to be my parents who are there. I don't necessarily think that this might be true forever, if I'm being completely honest, but accepting it and grieving it just means that you can let it go, and just means that you can have peace of mind. It's kind of paradoxical, but if you're able to accept that your parents are never going to be there for you, you will have peace. And then if they do show up, it's fine, but you're not dependent on it. Your happiness no longer depends on your parents being there. And that's the point that we want to get to. So mourn the things that you are not going to have. Take the time to do this. It is going to help you so much. And the last thing is doing certain rituals. That's what it says in my notes, but I actually want to rephrase it to using creativity and expression. This can be through any kind of medium that you like. I used to write poetry when I was a teenager, but for this, I started a painting of a picture of my mother holding me as a baby. I started it last year on the day that my heart got broken, and I picked it back up again after my surgery. It still isn't finished, but I think it's just something that I'm going to continue to work on every single time when I need to. The purpose is not to finish it. The purpose is just to have it and to be able to work on it while I am going through this emotional process. For me, it's been this weird amalgamation of love and grief at the same time. I made it originally with the intention to give it to my mother as a Mother's Day gift, but I didn't finish it in time. And now it's just become this way for me to process my past. Another thing that you can do is to write a letter to your parents. I also did this. I've written many letters to my parents, but I recently wrote one where I kind of introduced myself to my mom and my family as the version of me that I am right now, because a big part of me always felt like the version that I am right now was just invisible to them and didn't exist and wasn't allowed to exist in their reality. I really wrote it from the perspective of who I would want my parents to be, knowing that that's not who they are right now, but it was mostly to just honor myself and honor my perspective. It was kind of a love letter to myself and to them as well, but the version of them that they're not currently. It's a little bit hard to explain, but it was incredibly healing for me to do. I've also written a letter just expressing my grief and expressing my pain, which was also very, very necessary. I wrote an incredibly angry letter expressing all of the pain that I felt because my mom and my parents just didn't show up after my surgery. I wrote that one as well, never sent it. You can write them on paper and burn them, or you can just write them on your laptop and never send them. Something I forgot to mention in the section about leaning on friends and family is to not get jealous or envious at other queer people who do have supportive family. This is something that I, to my merit, never ever did. This is something I didn't do, and I'm so glad I never did, because it would have made me bitter and it would have only hindered my progress. To me, queer people who had supportive parents were just always a reminder that my identity was valid. When I looked around me and I saw the way that my parents treated me versus the way that other people's parents treated them, it was just confirmation for me that love existed, that unconditional love was real, that acceptance for queer people existed, and that my identity was valid in the eyes of other people, despite what my family thought and said. And that is how I took it, and that is how I also want you to take it. Because if you are going to be jealous, if you're going to say, they have it easy, they don't understand their privilege, they're maybe not even even really queer because they don't understand what the struggle is, how's that going to help you? Like, how? It never helped me ever. It's only going to make you bitter. It's going to make you angry. It's going to make you actually hate yourself more because you're hating on a version of you that you want to be. You're hating on a queer person who feels supported, who feels loved, who has a stable foundation, something that you actually know you want. And yes, it can feel really fucking unfair at times, but that's life. Unfortunately, life isn't fair. All you can really do is make the best of the situation that you're in, and then also recognize the love that is around you, because it is. It's there. No matter if you feel it on a daily basis or not, there's love for you out there. You being queer is actually something that makes you so incredibly beautiful, and it's something that makes you such a special person. It gives you such a unique perspective on life, and while it is a source of grief, there's so much wisdom to be found in pain. There's so much wisdom to be found in grief. I would not be sitting here making these YouTube videos if I hadn't gone through so much pain in my life. I would not have the valuable insight and wisdom that I have now to share with you if I didn't go through it myself. I genuinely have gotten to a point where I feel like I wouldn't change it. It is just what it is, and it's part of my human experience, and I accept it as so. I would choose this again if I got the option to. That's the most important thing about grief. You're working through your emotions so that you can accept this lack of a biological family that loves you, but also so that you can accept what you do have, and that you can finally let that love that you have around you in, and that you can actually build your internal sense of love and acceptance, because that, at the end of the day, is what your family was supposed to teach you, but what you now get the chance to teach yourself. Because once you disconnect from the feeling that they have to give it to you, that's when you can start to actually give it to yourself. And that brings me to the end of this video. I want to thank you so much for watching, and I really hope that this video helped you. I really hope that you gained some insight for your own journey with this, and that the steps that I outlined in the last part help you on your journey. I would love to hear from you what your favorite reminder was, or what your favorite piece of advice was from this video. If you'd like to share your own story in the comments, I would really appreciate it, and I would love to help you out if you have any more questions. You can also always reach out to me on my Instagram, which is going to be linked below, and I'll put the username up here. If you have anyone else in your life who's going through something similar, please share this video with them so that they can also feel less alone, and maybe talk to that person about it as well. I, again, want to just say that you are so loved, you are so beautiful, you are so worthy. This pain is not going to last forever. It's going to lessen with every single day. And yeah, I don't really know how to end this. I'm just going to say goodbye, and I will see you in the next one.